All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Transcendent Philosophy. This is Seth here, and we've got Abhishek. Abhishek, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hello, YouTube. My name is Abhishek, and I got interested in philosophy in 2018 mostly, and that's when I got really into philosophy. And since then, I've been pretty interested in many of the topics in philosophy, metaethics, uh, metaphysics, free will majorly. So I have a YouTube channel in which I am currently on a free will project, you can say, in which I'm discussing a lot of arguments against free will, and I've discussed the physics of free will, and now I'm on philosophy, and I'll discuss psychology and neuroscience later. So that's what
Ooh,
I'm up to right now.
nice.
Yeah, metaethics is a kind of uh, side interest that I've been keeping along with free will. So
Mm,
uh, morality is a very interesting topic for me. Uh,
mm.
and it got a boost in 2018, like I said. Like certain events happened in my life, and that just got me interested in morality a
Wow,
little.
that sounds like an interesting story to dig in maybe next time.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, we kind of met each other on this like Facebook group about no free will.
Right.
And I think we largely agree about there's no free will,
Yeah, that's true.
but we started to realize we have some disagreements about morality, right?
Yeah, right.
And
I
so we were
mean,
kind of interested in having a dialogue to see what these disagreements are.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you would classify yourself as an error theorist?
Okay, straight up that question. I mean, I'm not certain about which kind of theory to take in metaethics because uh, there's some elements of all these accounts that I'm impressed. I mean, that sounds convincing to me. Uh, so I can't count myself as an error theorist, out and out error theorist, because so here's the thing. So for people, the motivation for action comes from their emotions and expressions, that kind of stuff, the desires and all. So the for the motivation and reasons for action, it's the desires that does the job. But they do form beliefs about morality, although they are incorrect beliefs, like you can say. And I'll get to that in some moments. So people form beliefs about morality, and I think they are false beliefs in the sense that the way they form beliefs, they don't track with reality. There are no moral facts out there in the universe waiting to be discovered. I don't think so. The moral facts exist independent of a person's desires, attitudes, goals, and values. So that's why I like to call myself an error theorist. But yeah, uh, to get a perfect account of metaethics, in my opinion, you'll have to do empirical work in psychology, sociology, neuroscience, and stuff to really understand what it means when people
Okay.
state some moral claims, right? So that's what I think. Uh, and all those accounts have some convincing factors with them, like individual subjectivism is there, non-cognitivist emotivism, moral error theory. Yeah, but I don't want to classify myself as particularly this kind of an
Okay.
anti-realist. I'm kind of a skeptic of moral realism, so that's what I like
Okay. Okay.
to
That's
call
fair.
myself.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You are a moral anti-realist,
Yeah,
and you're a little bit agnostic about which type of moral
exactly.
anti-realism.
So what I think is that sometimes when people say statements like "don't kill" or "don't torture babies," so those are kind of emotivist responses. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And when people say that, murder is wrong. Those are kind of cognitivist responses. So people make both kinds of statements. So I don't really know. Like maybe both of them are true, depending on the circumstance in which they are making those statements. I might be wrong.
Abhishek.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're bringing up a lot of really good points. For my philosophy channel, I try to explain philosophy as simply as possible so that like beginners can get on board with it.
Okay.
And so you're bringing up a lot of good terms. I wonder if you could simplify it a little bit. You know what I mean?
All right. So yeah, like I said, moral emotivism. Moral emotivism is the stance that says that when people make moral claims, they are basically expressing emotions, like their attitudes, their approvals, their feelings. And there's nothing more to that. There's no cognitive element to that. The cognitive element means that there's no truth apt statement that they're making, that this claim is truth apt. It's either true or false. Because, for example, don't kill. It's not a truth apt statement. It's neither true nor false. It's just an expression, right? So this is what emotivism is. Then there's individual subjectivism, which says that, which is a cognitivist anti-realist theory. So it says that when people make moral claims, they are making truth apt statements, and those truth apt statements are just mind dependently true, right? It depends on their minds, preferences, beliefs, desires and stuff. So, but it's not true outside their minds. It's not a mind independent fact that's true of all the universe. It's just dependent on their minds. So it's individual subjectivism. And then
Now
there's
that would be a type of realism, though, right? Subjective morality.
okay, it depends on how
Morality
you
is
want to define
real.
it would depend on how you want to define it. So
It would be
okay,
it would be non-objective. So I guess this comes to the question of what is the definition of
exactly,
anti-realism?
yeah, kind of
Yeah.
does. So
Yeah, so maybe. Yeah. So, do you want to define it, or
okay, so the definition of moral realism or moral objectivism that I kind of work with or think in my mind is that there are, when people make moral claims, there are stance independent moral facts, and they're expressing those facts. There are stance independent moral facts. That is, there are facts that are not dependent on their minds or on their stances on a particular thing. They're out there in the universe, and irrespective of what a person feels, it exists out there. And it could be discovered in some way. It could be epistemically accessible in some way. So that's what moral realism is for me. That there are those facts and it can be discovered. Yeah, independent of people's
so
minds. Yeah.
mind independent moral facts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, mind independent, or I like to call it more stance independent moral facts, because sometimes people equivocate in the sense that I mean, people sometimes think, oh, what about if there are no human beings, no minds present? That's not what mind independence is. It actually means it does not depend on the contents of their minds. Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think I might have gotten confused a second ago because I think you're right that moral subjectivism would be a type of anti-realism.
Yeah.
Because, I think the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy defines moral anti-realism as the belief that moral facts or moral properties they don't exist objectively.
Right.
So if the moral facts exist subjectively, then that satisfies the definition of
anti-realism.
not being objective.
Correct.
So I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the crux of our disagreement right there, because
Okay.
I believe that there are moral facts that are mind independent, they are stance independent, they are
Okay.
objective,
Okay. Okay.
right?
All right.
And so I think this will be fun to dig into.
Absolutely. I've never had a
So,
moral realism debate with anyone, at least like
yeah.
this, and sometimes in the comments maybe. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
So before we get in, like we thought of some questions. Um, do you think it would be good if we kind of put forward our best arguments for our positions? How's that sound?
Well, yeah, maybe. Like I said, I don't want to hold to a particular position in anti-realism. There are these different
Yeah.
accounts of anti-realism, right? So maybe you
Okay.
can present your argument, and maybe I can present my objections to those arguments.
That sounds
Uh,
perfect.
that's one way we can go, and maybe later I can put across my argument as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So my argument is basically that there are moral facts that are mind independent,
Yeah.
and those moral facts are based on certain types of goals, right? So morality is often framed as in relation to goals. So, like Humean morality, Hume brought up the concept of a hypothetical imperative, right? So, if your goal is to do X, then you should, right? You ought to optimally navigate towards your goal, right? So, once we grant that you have a goal, then morality becomes objective in how we get to the goal. What that means is there could be better and worse ways of navigating towards the goal. Is that good so far?
Yeah. Okay,
And so,
I will let you present your whole argument, and then I'll respond.
sure. Yeah, I'll pause along the way to make sure you don't have any clarifying questions.
Sure.
So, yeah, so from my paradigm, as long as goals exist, then objective morality exists, because that's how you have better and worse objectively measure. So the word objective, I think of it as measurable, right? And why is measurable a good way to frame objectivity? Well, objectivity is often thought of as something that is mind independent, like you said. It's something that it transcends the subjective perspective, right? And so, like, each person is a subjective agent, and each subjective agent could say, oh, here's my perspective on how we can go do the goal. And then someone else says, here's my perspective on how to do the goal. And there's all these different people with all these different subjective perspectives. But if we calculate the navigation problem, we can say, oh, all of these people, their perspectives are wrong, and here is the objectively best way to get to the goal, right? And so that transcends all of the perspectives because it's calculatable, and those calculations, they exist in a mind-independent way, right? Math is mind-independent in that sense. Gravity is mind-independent, right? We can say, oh, like, when is Jupiter gonna travel across the sky? Like, we can do the calculations, and it's mind independent. And so
All right.
morality through these goals is the same way.
Okay.
So, any clarifying questions so far?
Not any questions. Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'm gonna build up where these goals exist.
All right.
I'll flesh out the goal aspect of it.
Okay.
So, so all of us humans, we all exist in nature. We exist in an evolutionary paradigm. We are biological creatures, and we are, there's this concept of philosophic thrownness. We are thrown into this world, right? And if we look at our surroundings, we exist within a structured paradigm, right? Like, everything around us is not random. And so we exist within what I would call a game, right? And so when you study evolution, there's this concept of evolutionary game theory, right? And so what it means is evolution gives us these goals, right? Whether we like it or not, there are these goals of like survival and reproduction. And those goals, they reduce to a more simple goal, which is existence and persistence across time. So we have like, there's this brute fact of existence, and that has this brute goal built into the structure of reality. That which can exist will exist. And once you exist, then you have a telos to have a goal of existence, because anything without the telos of existence ceases to exist. So by virtue of persisting in your existence, you nest yourself within a telos of existence, and a telos is basically a goal. So all of us exist within this iterative structure of evolution. Because we're iterating within evolution, we all have a goal of existence. And those goals of existence bubble up into more complex goals, right? So goal of existence bubbles up into survival and reproduction. Survival and reproduction bubbles up into competition and cooperation. And competition and cooperation bubble up into society, morality, justice, fairness, revenge, tit for tat, all of these complex moral goals, religion, chastity, addictions, like don't eat pork, don't, all these complex moral things, it all reduces down to existence, right? And so because we live within this goal-based structure, it's complicated, but in principle, there's a calculatable pathway that is optimal, right? And so that's why morality, there are mind-independent facts about morality, because morality is how to navigate through this goal of existence. And all of these different cultures, they're like inventing different moral strategies, right? These religions, don't eat pork, don't drink coffee, like don't, you need to fast on these different days, right? Everyone's like experimenting, like which strategy is the best. But like some strategies can be wrong and harmful, but then some strategies can be useful for the goal of existence. And for moral realism to be true, it like all you need for moral realism to be true is at least one of these moral facts has to be true, right? And so lots of people can be wrong about morality, but as long as some are correct, as long as in principle some of these facts are correct, then moral realism is justified. And I think that basically sums up my argument.
All right. So this is how I do it. I just write down points that you're saying, and I respond to those. So yeah, you said that hypothetical imperative, right? So hypothetical imperative is of the form if X then Y, right? If X then Y.
Yes.
It's not a categorical imperative. So hypothetical imperative itself tries to prove my point, which is subjectivism. Like if this person desires X, then he should do Y. It's just subjectivism rather than objectivism. Like a categorical imperative would tell you to do this no matter what. You have to do this, right?
Yeah.
But your account that you just presented doesn't have the normative force. So it's called the categorical normative objection. So the account that you just presented is just an explanation. It's just a descriptive account about the universe, you can say. All right. It's a descriptive account. It doesn't tell us what to do. It doesn't have that normative force, that push, that oomph, you can say, like that authoritative power. It's not there. It just says, if you want this, you can do this. All right, so if I have this goal, if I have this desire, this is what I have to do to achieve that desire. It's just a descriptive explanation of the universe, you can say. It doesn't have the normative force that people usually mean when they talk about morality. Like morality should have this authoritative component to it, which says that do this no matter what. it isn't tethered to your own goals and desires. For example, like if you don't want to get wet, don't go outside if it's raining. Like, it's dependent on your goals, right? So the more, like in your account you just mentioned about Hume's hypothetical imperative. I'm not sure if it's Hume's or Kant's. I think it's Kant's hypothetical imperative. So hypothetical imperative itself is an account of subjectivism, because if your goal is this, then this is what you should do to maximize your goal. But it doesn't have that irrespective of your goal, this is what you have to do, that kind of a prescriptive element to it. That's one objection that I had to raise here. And
Do you, do you want
yeah,
me to respond to that, or do you want to keep moving on to more objections?
all right. I mean, I just would like to respond to the ones I've written down, like
Yeah,
from
go
your
go
account,
ahead. Go
if you
ahead.
don't mind.
Let me just take a note so I don't forget to respond to this then.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe you can respond. I'm sorry. Actually, we can do that the other way.
Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of stuff, so while it's on my mind, it might be easier for me to respond to.
Yeah. You can do that. No, it's okay.
Okay.
You'll do that way.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. So I guess part of it is when I mentioned the hypothetical imperative, I wasn't saying that my perspective. I was using it to help guide.
Okay.
I was using it as a way to introduce where I was going. But yes, I agree that hypothetical imperatives are based on subjectivity, but I think that my paradigm transcends the hypothetical imperative.
Yeah.
It becomes categorical. So because once you are inside the game, you have the axiomatic, like you have the imperatives. The imperatives are thrust upon you by the game, right? You exist within a biological body. You have no free will. Your body is built with the imperatives of the goal. Like, it has that force upon you, whether you like it or not. It's not like a hypothetical, like, well, if I wanted to exist, I would do moral things. It's like, no, you want to exist because you have a body that was designed by existence-based processes. You know what I mean? So you necessarily, categorically have these goals. It's not just this subjective, arbitrary thing. You know what I mean? Everyone in the game has these goals.
Okay. So, for example, one of those goals, I saw that one of your videos in which you're saying that one of the goals, I mean, the primordial goal, you can say, is existence. Like, you quote ought to exist. You said, right? But when we think evolutionarily, I mean, I can give a descriptive account of that ought, I mean, which is naturalistic rather than the ought built into it. Like, it looks like, I'm not accusing you of anything, it looks like you're kind of smuggling in the word ought in there. So I can give a naturalistic account, uh, like genes. Genes have this tendency. Genes are chemical substances that have this tendency of agglomerating biochemicals around it, which would help it replicate into the future. As simple as that. And this biochemical process that's happening is what's manifesting in the form of a feeling of I want to exist. So I want to exist itself is a subjective, uh, I mean, is in the subjective realm. Objectively, what's happening is just what I said. I mean, the genes want to replicate, or the genes want to survive, you can say. And we are feeling like we ought to exist. But that's just a naturalistic explanation again. And it doesn't have that normative component to it, like I said. Right. So what I'm basically trying to say is that ought that you're trying to explain is not is actually not an ought. It just is an is.
Mm.
It's just an is. It's just a natural fact about the universe. It doesn't tell me what to do. And
Mhm.
not only that, I mean, when you dig deep, okay,
Mhm.
I can maybe agree that everybody has this desire to survive. All right, but that's just giving me universalism, moral universalism. It's still not giving me mind independent facts, mind independent moral facts. It's just subjective universalism, such that everybody is agreeing on wanting to exist. That's just subjective. Ultimately, it's subjective because it's 8 billion people's subjectivity combined, which is universalism. It's not objective in the sense that you have to exist irrespective of what your mind tells you. That's not what your evolutionary game theory is suggesting. It's not a mind independent objective fact of exist that you have to exist. It's just a natural fact, and we are just abiding by those facts. There's no, just like I said, there's no normative component to it. There's no categorical imperative that asks us that you have to live no matter what.
Mhm.
But not only that, I mean, like I said, like I just agreed, I just granted that most of the people have this desire to exist. There are many people who don't desire to exist as well, uh, or maybe their values are something else more than their desire of existence. Maybe they value well-being and all the pleasures that the world has to offer, and that's why they want to live rather than this ought to exist, right? So yeah, that's my objection. It still is a naturalistic account, and it's not a moral account. Like when people say they want to be moral, I mean, what they when you present them a natural account of the world, they would
Mhm.
say, oh, well, okay, so what? Now what? That's not what I mean by moral. I want a moral imperative that tells me to do what I have to do irrespective of how the world is. uh, yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. You can respond to that.
Okay. So I feel so. Okay. First of all, my moral paradigm, I think it would be considered uh, reductive moral naturalism. And what
Yeah,
that means is I am taking morality and I am reducing it to natural facts. So when you say you're just describing nature, I have a tendency to agree. Like, yeah, I am describing nature, but morality is natural. And so I don't grant morality a supernatural status. I don't feel like morality needs to have a God. Right? We don't need this God that approves, like, the God is, you need to do this. Like, I don't think that's a requirement of morality, right? So when you say morality needs to have this normative oomph, I'm translating what you're saying into morality needs to have a divine dictate behind it. And I don't believe in God. I think we're both atheists.
yeah, we agree on that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't feel like there's a reason to say that's a requirement for morality. Like, I think we look out into the world and people are engaging in moral debate. They're engaging in all of these moral discussions. You know, they're investing in courts of justice. Like, this is a big project that humanity is undertaking. So, and there's like there's a natural reason for all of this behavior. And we don't need a God to understand it. We can understand what humans are doing based on natural facts.
Yeah, but the objection still holds about the normativity. You can kind of give a reformist definition of morality, that morality is actually natural. It's just cooperation between human beings, uh, but it just doesn't account for what people actually mean when they say morality. Uh, it's just description of how facts, like game theory itself, it's basically a post hoc description of how things are going on in the universe. For example, so the various different strategies that are involved in game theory. uh,
Mhm.
okay, this is how it happened, or this is how it happens. That's just the explanation of how it's happening. It's not providing a normative component. That's that's my objection
Yeah.
to it. So anyway, I mean, uh, I would like to move on from that. I mean, you also
I,
said,
I
yeah, please,
I
you
have
can respond. Yeah.
I have a related question for you,
All
but I
right.
don't want to derail you, but it might be a good time for this question.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
Basically, the question is, do you believe that oughts exist?
Like it would depend. Like I don't believe, like I said, I don't believe that stance independent oughts exist. It's all
Do any
subjective.
do do any
Ought,
oughts exist?
I don't think oughts exist. I won't call them oughts. You should do it no matter what. Don't want to call it that. I want to do it because I want this. That's what I believe in. I don't believe in oughts as such. Like you should do it no matter what. Yeah, I don't want to call it. It may be a semantic disagreement.
So
Yeah.
you might believe in hypothetical imperative oughts, but you are skeptical of categorical imperative oughts, something like that?
Yeah, maybe you can say that if you want to define oughts that way. Yeah,
Okay. We might get back to that, but you can go to your next point.
sure, sure. And then you said evolution gives us goals. So evolution gives us goals is just another thing that's saying naturally you have these subjective desires. It's just again adding into my subjective account of moral, of metaethics, right? And yeah, uh, also, I mean, I mentioned that earlier as well about purpose. You mentioned the word telos, right? Um,
Mhm.
I guess that means purpose, like some kind of,
Yeah, like an
yeah,
ultimate aim or goal,
yeah, ultimate aim or goal, goal of existence,
directionality.
no directionality. But that's just
Yeah.
subjective. Like evolution produces all these different kinds of individuals with different kinds of desires, different kinds of goals. So
Mhm.
basically, my what I want to highlight on is the fact that even though most of the people would have this desire of existence, their values would be different. At the end of the day, their values, what they value, would be different. For example, some people value rights, while some people value pleasure or suffering. So that disagreement is always there. And I don't know what it means to say that this is wrong, this is right, because I don't believe in mind independent facts, mind independent moral facts, right? So there's always going to be disagreement between people on how to achieve their goals. Like you said, maybe you agree with Sam Harris on the well-being part, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But when you dig deep down, uh, and you might say that there are better ways to achieve well-being than other ways or something like that.
Yeah.
But I really don't know. It's pretty vague to me. Well-being, the word is a bit vague to me. You will have to explain. It's not a criticism of moral realism, to be honest. uh, but yeah, I'm not sure about if there is a exact way to achieve well-being, because there are moral disagreements in society among different individuals.
Hmm.
Some people are virtue ethicists, some people are utilitarians, some people are deontologists, right? So,
Hmm.
and I don't think that those value differences could be, you know, paused, and it can't be solved. I don't think it can be solved that easily. So disagreements do exist, and as long as disagreements do exist, I don't think there's a particular way. But maybe you can comment on that. And that I just went off on a tangent, I think.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So just to maybe elaborate on the connection between well-being and game theory, in my opinion, the way so like is like game theory is like the telos, and these creatures are evolving towards the telos, And well-being is the way that game theory is instantiated within a creature. So, for example, like if the goal is to exist, a very simple imperative is I ought to eat food, right? I ought to eat food because I ought to exist, and food helps me exist. So a little bacteria, it ought to exist, therefore it ought to eat food. And so the biology creates well-being, and the well-being creates the directionality. Whereas if I go get the food, I feel good. And so the moral goodness is connected to the well-being goodness. So what happens here is there's a philosophic concept of supervenience. Supervenience means that, so like super, it means on top, right? So there's game theory at rock bottom. The deepest layer is game theory. And then above that is well-being. And so well-being supervenes on game theory. So if the game theory changes, then the well-being changes. And so the environment, the game theory is calculating the environment. It's like you should eat plants in this environment. And so the well-being optimizes for plants. And then the environment changes, you should go eat mushrooms. And then the well-being alters to go, they get joy, they get well-being from mushrooms. And that system evolves into, I like the principle of justice. Like when I implement justice, I get the feeling of well-being, right? And so the morality is linked to the well-being. The well-being is what motivates us to do the good thing, right?
So here you just, it kind of looks like begging the question to me, like you're just defining morality as well-being. That's the biggest objection that any anti-realist would actually come up with against this. I agree that well-being maximization is good. And that's just a normative statement for me.
You just said that you agree that well-being maximization is good.
Yeah.
And my follow-up question is...
Sorry. I think I misspoke there. I shouldn't have...
Oh, okay.
Subjectively, I agree that my normative ethical standard is somewhere down the lines of well-being maximization is good. But in fact, that's not accurate. I'm a threshold deontologist. So I don't know if you want to say that it's all about well-being, but if you want to say it's about well-being, yeah, so then yeah, maybe I can just grant that for the sake of this debate. So yeah, well-being maximization, I like it, let's just do it. But it's just my subjective desire. It's not a mind-independent fact out there. But there will be people who don't value well-being as much or don't value it at all. So the existence of such people, like, for example, I will give you an example. Maybe no. Wait. Just a classic utilitarian example, maybe. Like, you're on a deserted island, you are a doctor, and you have all the kits necessary for surgery or something, and you are with three other people. One of them is your loved one, and the other are just from a completely different race. And I mean, if you operate and take organs from this loved one of yours, you can save those two people. All right. This is kind of a thought experiment. So what would you do? Maybe well-being maximization would be to save those people. All right. And well-being maximization would be to save those people, but that's not what's moral for some of the people. Maybe I won't do that, right? My deontic impulses just come about. So, yeah.
You're building like a trolley problem, right?
Yeah, kind of.
I guess I kind of missed the exact actions at play.
All right, I'll just repeat it again. I don't know if it's relevant to this, so I'll just repeat. So you're in a deserted island with your loved one and two other people who are of
Yeah.
different races.
Yeah.
All right, say one of them is from China, one of them is from Africa, and they are unwell. Some of their organs are not working. So one thing you can do is like you can euthanize your loved one and then take those organs and then fix them in these two
Okay,
people.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Sure.
So maybe
So
well-being
is
maximization would be to save those people, but
right,
that's
right, right, right.
not the moral values that many people would have, I think. Right.
So, okay, so we're kind of going down in the implementation aspect of
Yeah,
a
I
well-being
just
ethic.
I was just
So
bringing that.
it's a little bit tangential, but we
Yeah,
can
it
go
is.
there if you think it. Do you think it's valuable to go this direction?
Not very deep. Maybe we can get back to metaethics, but yeah, I just got
Okay.
that question. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just prepared
So
it myself.
yeah, that's fine. I think that this is one of like the number one like misconceptions of Sam's well-being argument.
Yeah.
Like people think that Sam Harris's paradigm does not know how to deal with this, and to be fair to them, he doesn't go into depth on these types of issues,
Yeah.
but he does address it very superficially. But basically, the perspective is well-being encompasses both utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. It synergizes them, and the reason is
But I think he
well.
calls himself a consequentialist. Anyway, just say.
I agree. Yes, and I think consequentialism also synthesizes deontology and utilitarianism and virtue ethics. So
In the rule utilitarian sense, maybe. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So basically what you can think of well-being is what makes the brain happy, right? And so there's multiple things that make the brain happy. So sometimes deontology makes the brain happy. Sometimes utilitarianism makes the brain happy. Sometimes virtue makes the brain happy. Sometimes pleasure makes the brain happy. And there's inside the brain, there's a battle for which one makes the brain happy. So in one situation, deontology wins. So deontology equals well-being for that situation. In a different situation, utilitarianism wins. Utilitarianism is good in that situation because that's what maximizes well-being. And so well-being adapts to the moral situation.
But then it comes to moral dilemmas, then you're in a pickle. Then I mean, you won't be able to solve the moral dilemmas. There will always be clashes between which one to implement here. So that's why I call it vague. I mean,
Well,
Sam also doesn't go deep into that, how to achieve that, how to merge all these theories together and get to the best one. Yeah.
that's absolutely true. He doesn't
Yeah.
go deep into it. I have thoughts on how to do this, but do you think it'd be good to go into that?
No. I mean, let's get back to metaethics, maybe.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going down.
So,
This is
so
a fun.
basically, what I
This is
was
a really
trying
fun.
to say is that there will be disagreements. The
Yeah,
people's
for
values are
sure.
different, right? And I don't think we're going to be forcing values onto people like this one is the best one. You better listen to it. I mean, we can do that in a normative system, but I'm just saying that there is no mind independent fact that is accessible to everybody, that everybody will agree on. Right. If
So
it's a mind
that
independent fact that
seems
everybody will be agreeing on, it's got to be accessible, right? Then disagreements won't be happening. Actually, that's what I think.
that sounds like an epistemological criticism.
Yeah.
Is it? Is that like it's hard? It's hard to calculate what the correct objective moral thing is, but
No. So I'll tell you what that is. So there
okay.
are basically three kinds of objections to moral realism that I can think of right now. One is the metaphysical objection, like we said. There are facts. Where are those facts? How can we find out those facts? How can we discover those facts? Right.
Yeah.
Where are they located, situated? That's one
Yeah.
objection. The second objection is about epistemology, how to
Mhm.
access those facts. Is it rationality? Is it desires? So basically, subjectivists would say that there are no facts, but it's just desires, right? There are no facts which are being accessed. It's just desires doing their work. That's what subjectivists say. But
Mhm.
there's some non-naturalists, like you might be knowing, I don't know, who say that it's just rational intuition, like you can derive 1 plus 1 equal 2. If p, then q, p therefore q. These are logical mathematic uh, intuitions that we have, right? So morality is somewhere down those lines, epistemically accessible, which are reasons for action that you can access, uh,
Mhm.
and which is mind independent. It just doesn't depend on what your desires are. So even if you desire this, doesn't matter. You've intuitively derived this moral fact from somewhere. I don't know where that is, but yeah, this is one objection. The objection is that how to access those facts. What is it? So there's a philosopher J.L. Mackie, who is an
Mhm.
error theorist, who has this objection called queerness objection. Like, these properties are queer. It's very special. Nobody knows what
Yeah.
these properties are. I mean, where are you getting these properties from? So metaphysical objection and epistemological objections. You don't know how to access them. These
Yeah.
are two, and then there's semantic objection, in the sense that that's not what people say when they say moral, when they make moral claims.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not related to some fact out there, mind independent fact out there. Uh, yeah, these are the three objections. Like, semantic objections is not a particularly I mean, strong objection kind of thing. But yeah, metaphysical and epistemic objections are. So yeah, I don't know what you have to say about that.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree that the queerness. Yeah, I don't believe that morality has queer metaphysical properties,
Yeah,
which is a philosophic term, right? Um, so like I reduce it to natural facts, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so like for example, like math, like I don't believe in queer metaphysical math. Like I don't believe that the number one is floating out in outer space,
yeah,
right? But I believe that mathematical properties are mind independent, right?
yeah.
Like
Mathematical
everyone,
properties certainly are, but not
yeah.
moral.
Well, game theoretic calculations are basically a mathematical ontology. It's the
Yeah,
same. It's
but
the same category.
just like I said, game theory is just like, uh, in this particular time period or eon, you
Mhm.
can say, this is how this species interacted with each other. That's all game theory is saying. It's not
Mhm.
telling us what to do, right? So here, this strategy is what they implemented. All right, later on, this strategy is what they will be implementing. It's game theory is just that. It's a mathematical explanation of how things are happening, or maybe how things uh, will help them, help with their well-being, or maybe survival, or
Mhm.
proliferation, or something. Yeah, there are objective facts which will help their proliferation, maybe as many uh, offsprings as possible. This is what you have to do if you want these as many offsprings as possible. That's how I see it, game theory. It's not a moral. It may be an explanation of how things evolved, how living beings evolved, but and maybe it can be an explanation of how interactions happen between individuals of the species, but it's
Mhm.
not talking much about morality, like this is how you should
Mhm.
do it. It's not talking much about that.
Uh-huh. So one question I have is, do you believe that goals exist?
Yeah, subjectively.
Goals exist subjectively.
Yeah.
Does the optimal way to accomplish a goal exist?
Optimal way to accomplish a person's goal. Um, okay. So I'll have to go into two, like first order and second order desires, maybe. Like a person has a first order desire to do this, but the second order desire would be to do something else. And there is a lot of inconsistencies going on there. Like inconsistencies and clashes, conflicts between this desire and that desire. It depends on which desire to maximize. Right. And
Yeah.
maybe there's no particular answer to that. Maybe right now this is what he desires, and after some time the other one is what he desires. So I don't know what to say. You may probably say that in such a way that suppose there's an ideal observer, like a god. Just hypothetically, just suppose there's a god, and the god would desire you to have a desire to do this. All right.
Sure.
You get what I'm saying? So, in such a way, so this guy has a desire to do maybe smoking. The guy has a desire to smoke, but God wants him not to smoke. So,
Yeah.
if God were in his place, God would instill the desire of not wanting to smoke. Like God would desire that this guy not desire smoking. In that way, maybe you can call it interests, like in the best interest of the guy. This is in the best interest of the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe those kind of facts may exist if you're consistent with that particular interest or desire. God's desire for you, maybe, which are consistent and don't change as much because it's God. It will be stable, right? So maybe, yeah, in that kind of way, maybe you can find those well-being facts. But yeah, it's not as easy. Psychology, it just keeps on changing. People's desires keep on changing. First order desires, they clash with each other. With second order desires, what are third order desires? So I don't know. It keeps on changing. Yeah.
So am I correct in saying that you believe that there are better and worse ways to accomplish subjective goals, and sometimes an individual will have the incorrect perspective and the God would have a more correct perspective?
Perhaps yes, but I don't know what it means to have a correct perspective. The reason is that, consider God, for example.
Yeah.
God is omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent. All right. So the way God would see a particular moral situation, maybe he would be emotionless. He would be a stoic. His responses to a particular moral situation would be a stoic response. He won't be acting with emotions. He would be perfectly rational. And yeah, I don't know if he would take risky decisions or not. The opposite, no, not risky at all. But yeah, the desires of God and this particular agent are going to be completely different. Even if you say that, suppose God wants things in the best interest of this guy, even if that's the case, God would want this guy to desire things according to what he thinks is best, not what the guy thinks is best. All right, so there's a lot of clashes going on there. So would you say that, for example, God's perspective is the best? I don't think so. So that's where that's where subjectivity comes in. For example, maybe suppose a moral situation comes in which you have to, the same deserted island situation. Maybe God would choose to save those two people. All right, and this guy won't want to do that. So
Yeah.
there's this conflict. So
Sure.
would you be able to say that God's perspective is the right one? I mean, it doesn't matter what this guy thinks. We have to do what God thinks is best for him to do. You won't be able to say that. So that's why subjectivity is appealing to me. And this is a good example for that. I mean, yeah.
All right, so there's a lot there. So one thing I will want to say is that I believe that the concept of God is the anthropomorphization of game theory. So,
All
so
right.
what I mean by so yeah, God is equivalent to game theory, and well, it's so game theory. There's like so just there's a linguistic comment. We're like a concept is often simultaneously a meta concept and an instantiation of the concept, right? So, for example, the word philosophy, it can mean, so you can use the word philosophy as like an umbrella term that includes every type of philosophy. But you can also say, this is my philosophy, this is Chinese philosophy, this is European philosophy, right? And so the same thing with game theory. Like there's the entire category of game theory, and then there's like specific instantiations of game theory, right? So each god is an instantiation of a certain type of game theory. Does that make sense so far?
Certain type of game theory, but by that, do you mean strategy, game theoretical strategy?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the Christian religion, or the Judeo-Christian, the Mosaic, like Moses, right? Moses
Yeah.
give you the 10 Commandments. So the 10 Commandment strategy is you ought not lie, you ought not kill, you ought to keep the Sabbath day holy, you ought to have no other gods, you ought to not covet. Like it's a list of strategies.
Yeah.
And the God is saying, guess what? You should do all these strategies. And so the culture is instantiating these strategies on the people, right?
Yeah. The culture is instantiating these strategies on the people. By culture, you mean the Judeo-Christian culture?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. But yeah, I mean, the Judeo-Christian God is kind of controversial, to say the least, isn't it? I
For
mean,
sure, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I mean,
And game theory is controversial. Evolution is controversial. Morality is controversial.
I
These
mean,
are all controversial topics,
at
right?
least game theory, evolution are do exist. It happens. Game theory and evolution happens. Game theory
Yeah,
is just an explanation of how evolution happens, you can say.
yeah, yeah.
And morality is just subjectively brought about phenomena. Yeah, but God, it's something that we don't agree on. But yeah, but
So
I don't understand what you say by saying that God is the instantiation of game theory, something like that. Uh, yeah, what do you mean by that?
okay. So evolution, let's just follow the pathway of evolution, right? Evolution evolves individual creatures, and these individual creatures have individual morality, which is I ought to do this and I ought not to do that, right? And then creatures evolve into social creatures, right? Humans are social creatures. Social creatures are more complex. And so now, like the social creature, it's got a more complex morality, right? It's got the individual morality but then it's got the social morality on top of it, right? I ought to do these things for myself, but I ought to do these other things for society. And so now you've got genes and culture that are working together for the game theory, right? And so there's this bifurcation, And so culture evolves, and religion is an extension of cultural evolution. And so the culture is the social game theory. The religion is the social game theory that's attached to the individual game theory.
All right.
And so evolution is mutating, it's creating different cultures, and it's testing which cultures can accomplish the goal of existence, right? If a culture is self-destructive, it disappears. The cultures that are stable persist and accomplish the goal. And it continues iterating. It's trying to maximize the goal for both layers of evolution.
All right. But when you try to equate or relate game theory with morality, you're kind of falling to the naturalistic fallacy category. Like whatever happens in the nature is good, that kind of a category. Then you can bring about all kinds of reductives like diseases are good, parasites are good, rape is good. Like it brings you to very horrible reductives. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
Oh, 100%. From the perspective of the lion, ripping the throat out of a gazelle is good.
Yeah.
Like that's
And
the
like
reason.
tribalism also. Tribalism has been a big part of evolution in almost all animals, you
Yeah.
can say. I'm saying animals, every species actually, maybe, I think. So in-group versus out-group bias is a part of evolution. So
Yeah.
you're going to be saying that's moral. But I don't agree with that, and people won't agree with that. That's not what morality is. This is just a description of how things happen. I'll just keep on saying that again and again.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like game theory is just, it falls prey to naturalistic fallacy. Like you will have to somehow agree that it was good. Like we may be a product of rape that happened thousands of years ago, maybe. And we will have to kind of justify that in the sense that since we exist, that's good. Like whatever maximizes species transfer into the next generation is good.
Yeah. So do you think
Tribalism,
that
racism, yeah. I'm sorry.
do you personally think that tribal genocide is bad, morally bad?
Yeah, personally think that tribal genocide is bad. Yeah, I personally think that.
Where do you think that opinion came from within you? What is the genealogy of that opinion inside of you?
I
Did
just
God
don't want.
give you that opinion?
No, God didn't. Yeah, certainly it came from nature. It came from nature. So did other people's desire to rape also came from nature.
Your moral opinion came from nature, right?
Yeah.
So that's my argument. Morality comes from nature.
Okay,
right?
yeah, I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
Right.
But that's just not what philosophers say when they talk about morality, or even people when they talk about morality. This is just a word that comes out is trivial. It's just a trivial, inert account of morality. Like, okay, so what? That's the response I want to give to that. Like, oh, this is how things happen naturally. All right, I knew that already. This is what will maximize well-being. All right, I knew that already. Now what? So what? That's the kind of a response, because it's a trivial account. Naturalistic moral realism is a trivial account. It's inert, and it doesn't have the moral characteristics that moral realistic account should be having.
So there's two angles here. There's the moral oomph or the normative oomph that you're looking for, and there's the triviality.
There's triviality as well as, like I said, I still don't know how we can get an ought from an is.
Okay, let me just write this down. Triviality. The what was the other one? I lost.
Categorical normativity objection, like I would like to call it.
Can't, how did I just phrase it just now? I lost my train of thought.
Which one?
Those are the three issues. There's the first
Okay.
one.
This is the first one,
Okay.
categorical normativity objection.
Oh, it's yeah.
Normativity objection. Then there's the is-out gap.
Okay. Let me target triviality first.
Yeah.
Triviality. So I disagree that it's trivial. And the reason is this paradigm of game theory presents a framework in which morality is not arbitrary, right? So if morality is arbitrary, then it would be trivial. And in my opinion, the anti-realist perspective of morality is it's arbitrary. There's no patterns. It's just random. It's every culture, every individual does their own thing. There's no measurable pattern. There's no measurable direction. There's no measurable telos. And it's just whatever. But this game theoretic naturalistic paradigm shows you there is a directionality to these feelings, right? There is a subjective component to morality. We have these moral feelings, but those moral feelings, they're not arbitrary. They come from somewhere. They come from millions of years of these game theoretic optimizations. And there's a telos and there's measurability. And that's all. There's a mind independent half that makes it very non-arbitrary. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't agree with that. Like I said, I don't know how you've given an account for a mind independent moral theory. You've just described how evolution happens. You haven't given an account for morality. Like I mean, maybe we are just thinking about this too much. Like we're just stuck on this a bit too much, maybe.
Well, would you agree that evolutionary, the description of evolutionary morality is not random? It has a telos.
I don't agree with that as well. Like I just said, right? I don't agree with the telos. Like there's no purpose, there's no teleology to evolution. Evolution doesn't have a goal. I don't think evolution has a goal as such.
Okay. What about teleonomy? People often get hung up. So teleonomy is the emergent version of teleology. So sometimes people think like there's a top-down perspective and a bottom-up perspective, right? So like if God tells you you must do something, maybe that's a top-down goal. But then there's from the bottom up is an emergent goal, right? And so evolution has the emergent goal of existence, which is teleonomy, right? So would you agree that there's a teleonomy, which is the appearance of a goal?
Yeah, appearance of a goal. I mean, appearance of a goal. Yeah, subjective goals, stance-independent goals. I mean, sorry, stance-dependent goals.
I mean, like over millions of years of evolution.
Yeah.
Like if you have the bird's eye view of evolution, is there like a flow to it? Or is it just random?
Well, yeah, mutation and natural selection.
Right.
Yeah. You can say that's kind of, there's uniformity there. Yeah,
so,
okay, I agree with that.
Right, because theists, like anti-evolutionist theists, often make this mistake. They think evolution is random, but in my opinion, that's an incorrect perspective. The mutations are random, but the selection is not random. The selection guides the mutations towards the emergent goal, right?
Maybe, but I just don't understand what you mean by goal. Because you're trying to bake in the word goal. The reason is, I mean, you know that 99.99% of all species have gone extinct, right? So it doesn't seem to me like
those ones were immoral. Those species were sinners, man.
Well,
So let me give you an example. In a hot desert, water is scarce, right? So if a creature is living within a desert, it's going to have a teleonomy of evolving mutations that help it, avoid the heat, that help it be more efficient with water, that help it find water. Like the mutations are going to be guided towards desert adaptability, right? So desert adaptability is the emergent goal of the desert environment.
all right. I just don't want to use the word goal there. I want to describe it in natural terms.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. That's the disagreement. I want to
yeah,
describe it in natural terms. I would say, like the mutations that allowed an organism to survive in that desert stayed on, and the others just died off. That's it.
yeah,
Now the goal, searching for goal, is just that's the anthropomorphic kind of element to it. It's just us human beings who's trying to find out a goal there. I don't see that as a goal. I just find that as a descriptive fact. Yeah.
yeah. But when we're discussing mutations, we can agree that it's the mutations that are adaptive are not random and they're not arbitrary, right? There's a selective process for mutations in this environment, right?
Yeah, the selective process does happen. That's how the environment is. That's how Earth is, you can say.
Right. Right. So what happens is evolution is creating creatures with goals. I believe you already granted that goals exist subjectively, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Where do those subjective goals come from? They come from evolution,
yeah. So yeah,
right?
that's how you want to define objective morality, I think. Yeah, I know that. That's how you want to define objective morality. You just basically think that although morality comes from, we kind of agree, I think, in the sense that morality is subjective in the sense that it's coming from preferences of human beings, but those preferences themselves are coming from brains which are objective. That's why I call it uninteresting. I mean, trivial. Okay, I know that. It's the subjective preference is coming from brains which are objective, which are objects like neurons. Contain like neurotransmitters, and like it's carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, all these things, and those are objective things. Okay, all right, yeah, I will agree with you on that. But yeah, it just doesn't capture morality.
So here's a follow up question. Do you think that the subjective goals or the moral opinions within humans, these subjective goals and moral opinions, are they arbitrary? Are they random? Or is there a selection process for these things?
Well, you can find out similarities between goals in human beings.
You say that again?
You can
You
find out
can't,
similarities.
you can
Similarities
or cannot?
can.
Can.
The first
Okay.
one,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
there are similarities between subjective desires of human beings.
Uh,
Yeah, it's just the
so,
psychological constitution, and that's how evolution designed. I mean, that's the product of evolution. That's all I can say. That
yeah.
there are individuals, and many of those individuals have the same kind of desires. Yeah.
So if there's a selection process on subjective goals and moral opinions, doesn't that mean those things are not arbitrary?
Mm, yeah. Perhaps not arbitrary. Like you can find a pattern. That's what I can say. You can just find a pattern, but you just can't generalize that there's this goal. I mean, you can find a pattern. Like
Yeah.
many of these individuals have these similar desires. Many of these individuals have these similar desires. That's it. And and a common desire, like you said, maybe to exist. But I can say there can be people who say they don't value existence. I just don't care. They will say that they just don't care. For example, take an example of a different planet. All right. So they evolved the desire to exterminate all of the species, and even in them the outgroups. All right. So those are their norms. That's what evolution designed them to do. And you can find a pattern there as well. Why shouldn't I follow that kind of a norm? Call it
You said,
Zorpian norms.
and the Zorpian norm is to extinct other species?
Yeah, like in group. I mean, exterminate all the out group members. Just this particular race, you can say, just for sake of it, this particular race should go ahead and proliferate. That's the kind of desire, subjective desire, that evolution that happened there instilled in them. So why shouldn't I follow that one?
Yeah. So,
That's their norm.
right. So this gets into the moral progress argument. So you can look at morality through history and you can see morality evolving, right? In the past, Zorpian morality, is more common. Like ancient humans were more likely to extinct other species. They're more likely to genocide. And if a tribe is doing that, you can infer that they think it's good because that's what they're doing, right? And so there could be different types of game theory. Like each religion is a type of game theory. Each historical era has its own game theory. There's the tribal game theory. There's the empire game theory. There's the religious hegemony game theory. There's the secular game theory, right? And so, but the concept of moral progress is that our morality, our game theory is improving. So we're going from this paradigm to this paradigm. Ooh, that was an improved strategy. Now we go to here and we're improving, right? And so maybe for the ancient people, genocide was good, but then they learned how to cooperate with other tribes and they're like, hey, this is actually better, right? And so what happens is in evolution, there's a concept of tit for tat. So if you hurt someone, they hurt you back. And so if your strategy is genocide, then eventually someone else genocides you. It's like, wow, revenge, that sucks. Guess what? Extinction, that fails the goal of life, right? The goal of life is existence. And so they have to evolve to a better strategy for existence, which is, hey, instead of genociding people, how about we cooperate with them? So then the Roman strategy evolves. We're not going to genocide these people. We're going to tax them, right? We're going to extract resources and, we're kind of going to share our culture and take resources. That's maybe a symbiotic or parasitic colonial game theory, right? But then we keep evolving. Slavery used to be considered good at the societal level, right? It was bad at the individual level, good at the societal level. But then we evolved, hey, if you oppress people, they're not going to like it. They're going to fight back. We had a civil war, right? America had a very bloody civil war because this wasn't a good strategy. Like people didn't jive with it. And so we evolved a better strategy. And so the Zorpians, like all you have to do is plot out a course of moral progress in order to overcome that objection.
But it still isn't telling me what's good or what's bad. It's just a
Well,
description.
what's good is existence, and if you xenocide other species, you're going to harm your own existence eventually.
I don't understand
It's
how that's going to happen. Okay, let me give you an example. Like we can survive right now without farming animals into exist in factory farms. All right, and so by your standards, like game theory, we don't have a game theoretical advantage by killing them. For example, we can live without them. Without killing them. Then you've got to admit that killing them is moral in whichever way possible.
I'm a little bit
Like it's
confused.
okay. So what I'm saying is that factory farming isn't game theoretically disadvantageous for us.
At least it seems that way.
Yeah. Okay. Just grant for me. I'll just keep on adding in the hypotheticals. Will you grant for the sake of it that it's not advantageous evolutionarily, game theoretically?
Which is not advantageous.
Factory farming?
It's not advantageous to humans, or it is advantageous to humans?
It is not in the game theoretical sense because we can just live without them as well.
Okay, they're not necessary to our game theory.
Yeah, they're not necessary for our survival and proliferation. All right.
Sure.
So, because it is not bad for game theory, it is not bad. It is not immoral to kill them, whichever way we want to kill them. Do you agree with that?
It's not immoral because of what again?
It is not immoral to factory farm animals and like kill them in slaughterhouses, butcher them in slaughterhouses in the most immoral way possible. It's not actually immoral. Would you agree with that?
So I would say it is immoral. It is immoral to cause suffering. And it's a little bit complicated to address this. So bear with me here. I'm going to go on a tangent and bring it back, right? So in bacteria, we can study bacteria dynamics, right? And bacteria have game theoretic strategies, and they're trying to coexist. And there's this concept of the paper, rock, scissors dynamic, right? And so what happens is there's one species of bacteria that evolves to like eat. It eats really fast. And so it's like consuming all the food in the environment. And like the other bacteria, they're like, oh no, this guy it's dominating the environment. And it creates evolutionary pressure, right? So by abusing, like it's basically abusing its neighbors. And so the neighbors have pressure to evolve, and they evolve a new strategy. The bacteria evolves a poisonous strategy. So it secretes poison into the environment, and guess who dies the fastest? The guy who's eating everything super fast, he eats all the poison, he dies. And so the poisonous bacteria figures out how to counter the strategy. Now there's another bacteria that's so now the poisonous bacteria is dominating the ecosystem. And now the other bacteria has to figure out how to counteract this poison, because the other bacteria, they're getting poisoned to death too, just slower. And so the other bacteria, they learn how to become immune to poison. And so there's these immune bacteria, and the immunity is cheaper than the poison. It's expensive to release all this poison. The immunity is cheap. And so now the immune bacteria begin to propagate. And so what happens, it creates a paper, rock, scissors dynamic, to where it's like the immune bacteria grow, and then the poisonous bacteria grow, and then like they keep growing in a circle until they balance each other out. And they create a game theoretic equilibrium, right? And so the concept is when you abuse other creatures, you are putting evolutionary pressure on them to create revenge, right? You're making them want to develop a revenge strategy. And so when we abuse other animals, we might think, oh, we're getting all this benefit from abusing them, but that creates pressure that might create evolutionary karma, right?
Okay, but I don't know how you're gonna relate it with my example.
Yeah, so like animals, rats, they created the bubonic plague that killed, 1/3 of humanity. So if these animals can learn how to host viruses, they can fight back against humanity. They might be able to extinct us. You know what I mean?
Okay,
So it's
but we are intelligent creatures. I mean, we can devise all other technologies to avoid this from happening. I mean, to prevent this from
maybe
happening. Yeah.
right.
So
Yeah, slave.
if that's the case, so just add into my hypothetical all these things. Like we're
Yeah,
gonna we're gonna avoid that. I mean, we're gonna prevent that from happening. Like
yeah,
them having defense mechanisms against us, or developing poisons against us, or kind of revenge against us. Game
yeah,
theoretically, it's just neutral. Like they're just there. We just generating them into existence, and we're just killing them and eating them, and we're just testing those species for all these things, and we're making sure all these diseases or whatever that is disadvantages for us doesn't happen. Suppose that's the case, and it is also not game theoretically disadvantageous for us. We can live on plant-based diets, all right, and you say that it is immoral to kill them. So
yeah,
what I'm saying is that's a contradiction. Like you're saying that whatever helps our survival is good, whatever helps human
yes,
being survival is good,
yes,
but this
yes,
is not helping our survival. So I mean, it's just neutral. So whatever is against our survival is bad, but this isn't against our survival, so it's good. Like killing those factory farmed animals is good. You would have to you will be led to that conclusion. This is what entails from that whatever helps our survival is good. Also, I personally feel that's a very dangerous kind of a no, I mean, not very dangerous, but it has this element of absurdity, that whatever helps our survival is good. You can just find out hypotheticals in which, like I just gave you, factory farming, in
yeah,
which you can in which it is not disadvantageous for our survival and well-being, but which we can perceive as immoral, like this one. I can maybe come up with other examples. Yeah, but I don't have to. I mean, this is a pretty good example
yeah,
in
yeah,
itself.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's the conclusion you will be led to, that it's moral and immoral at the same time. That's a contradiction, or you will have to accept one of these. And if you accept
Right.
it's immoral, then you'll have to your whole theory will be dismantled. And if you say that's moral, then that's pretty absurd in my opinion.
So part of this, in my opinion, is a question of long-termism. So short-run game theoretic strategies are usually what we classify as immoral strategies, right? So theft is a universal moral principle, right? We haven't got to this yet, but this helps support moral realism. Is that like they've done studies, sociologists have done studies cross-culturally, right? There's a specific research study that analyzed 60 different cultures, and they were looking for universal moral principles. And they found 7 principles that existed in every single culture with no exceptions, right? And so this is a sign that morality is not arbitrary. Evolution is guiding us towards these good principles. One of those principles is thou shalt not steal, right? And the reason why steal, well, you can say, well, for my individual, right? I'm an individual. Stealing is good. Like I get a benefit, right? I should steal. But that's a short-term perspective, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
short
agree
term.
with game theory. I agree
Yeah.
that, yeah, there's this
Well, I'm
trade-off
saying
going on all the
I'm
time.
saying abusing animals is the same thing as theft. As moralistically, it's the same analysis.
But yeah,
It's
it's just not disadvantageous for our survival and proliferation. So that's kind of one thing that you'll have to think about. Maybe
fair enough.
you'll have to include some kind of a, you know, I don't know. Did you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. I thought I thought I addressed it. Maybe maybe for me it's satisfying. Maybe for other people it's not a satisfying response. But basically, my point is sometimes things that are immoral can be successful strategies in the evolutionary short run. So, for
Yeah, I
example,
agree with that. But that's
so
just
like
immoral. That's the whole
it's just
point, right?
so what I'm saying is abusing animals is immoral,
Yeah.
but we get away with it in the short run, right? So we
Okay.
humanity we got away with slavery for thousands of years,
Hmm.
but eventually we had to evolve out of it because it wasn't a sustainable strategy.
Yeah.
So in the long run, we have
And
to switch.
an
That's my
objection I have is that, you know, it isn't focusing on particular individual actions. Suppose, I mean, particular individual moral scenarios. Game theory doesn't tell you what to do in that.
game theory doesn't tell you what to do. Why doesn't it tell you what to do?
Like, game theory would say that even if I grant you that there will be effects if we keep killing these factory farmed animals, even if I grant you that will happen,
Yeah.
but game theory won't tell me that that particular action is bad.
So well-being is basically telling you what the game theory is. And there could be competing game theories. So there could be the human game theory, there could be the animal game theory, and there could be a contradiction between the two. But the evolutionary game theory shows us that symbiotic strategies are superior in the long run to competitive strategies. So the abusive strategy is competitive. That's a short run strategy. Short run strategies are immoral. Symbiotic strategies are sustainable. That's a long term strategy. So the symbiosis is reciprocity. I do something good for the animal does something good for me, and that's what works for the long term.
Yeah,
Right?
but you know, game theory is not other regarding it. I see it as like it's good for me. It's good for me that I do that because in the long run, it will benefit me. But that's just not morality. I mean, morality. Did you get my point? I mean, what I'm trying to say is
No,
that
no.
morality is categorical imperatives. It's saying,
Yeah.
telling you that do this regardless of whether you want to do this or
My answer
whether
to
it
that is
affects you. I
my
mean,
answer to that is your biology is the categorical imperative. That's where it comes from. Your biology gives it to you.
that's not a satisfactory answer for me. Like I said that I can just explain all this in the naturalistic terms, like
Yeah.
like I told you before as well. How is it that evolution is happening? Like for example, the first RNA or DNA molecule that wants to replicate, it's just a chemical reaction. I mean, basically what it is that replication will make that chemical reaction stable. That's it. Replication of that RNA or DNA will make that chemical reaction stable.
Yeah.
And it just got layer by layer of complication throughout billions of years, and that's what we are. And I can just explain it naturalistically without
Yeah.
wanting to introduce oughts and wants and stuff. This is just
Well,
naturalistic
as soon as
explanation.
as
And
soon as you have a goal, once you have a goal, you have an ought. and the biology gives you the goals.
But you know what, the goal itself is a thing. It's kind of this ontological redundant entity for me. This concept of goal, like, it's an entity which need not be included in the explanation of things. So Occam's razor can just cut that down. We don't need the explanation in the terms of oughts and goals. We can explain it naturally. Okay, so here's this chemical, adenine, guanine, thymine, and stuff. So what makes it stable is that if it replicates, that chemical reaction is stable, and then a whole lot of complication is added in, but all that has naturalistic explanations, and that just goes on and goes on. Human beings, I don't have to invoke, I don't have to bake in, goals and oughts in that explanation. So it's an explanatory impotence that this account has, this naturalistic account has. It is superfluous, explanatorily superfluous explanation. It just doesn't require this extra entity of goals and oughts. Like, I think you would agree that Occam's razor would say that entities which can be reduced without extra entities are not required, which can be explained without the requirement of those entities. That's the more acceptable explanation of a particular phenomena, right? So yeah, there's this Occam's razor component to it as well. You're just baking in the ought in the anthropomorphic way. It's just our way of thinking of it. Like, it just helps us understand evolution.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Like, this goal and ought kind of way, it just helps us understand how this is happening. I'm sorry if that was a bit
So I think you're going to force me to talk about neuroscience now. Like, I can't believe you're forcing me to talk about neuroscience. So I think you would agree that we have drives, right? We have biological drives. That's not... So biological drives are basically biological goals, right?
Yeah, that's where, I'm okay with that as long as the discussion is not about metaethics, for example, or it doesn't have this tendency
what
to go.
Let's give a list of biological drives, right? We have a drive to eat, right? And then we ought to eat, and we satiate the goal. We have the goal of sleep. We have the drive to sleep. We have the drive to go to the bathroom. We have the drive to reproduce, right? What stops us from having a moral drive, which is a biological drive to do moral things? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, that drive exists. Yeah, I can agree with that. The moral imperative, right? Some people have the desire to be moral. I don't know where that came from. It just came from your brain, your neuropsychology. Maybe it came from there.
Right.
But yeah, I can agree that there are drives to be moral. All right.
Yeah. So let's say you have a drive to eat food, and you're like, oh, I feel this drive. So now I got to figure out how to eat food, right? And so the brain, it's got the limbic system, and it's got the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system has the drive, and the drive says, I want to eat food, so I have a goal. And then the prefrontal cortex says, okay, we need to calculate how to most optimally satisfy the drive. And so your brain, the prefrontal cortex, it's calculating, okay, what do I want to eat? Do I lack salt? Do I lack sugar? Do I lack protein? Okay, do I want to go get fast food? Do I want to go get steak? Do I want to go get veggies? So your prefrontal cortex is calculating the optimal way to satisfy the hunger. And then once you figure out what type of food you want, then you got to calculate the location. So the prefrontal cortex is saying, okay, this type of food is 20 minutes away. This type of food is 30 minutes away. And it's optimizing how to accomplish the goal of food, right?
Yeah,
None of
yeah,
that is arbitrary. And the brain is, there is an objectively, measurably more optimal and less optimal way to do it. And the brain wants to find the optimal pathway.
yeah, yeah. I agree
So
with that.
if it works for food, why doesn't it work for morality?
I mean, again, I just have all the objections that I already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The normativity objection, the Isot objection, uh, yeah, the appeal to
So
nature fallacy, all that. I mean, maybe we can kind of uh, move forward from here.
sure,
I mean,
sure.
I agree. Okay, let me agree with a few stuff. I agree that nature has given us desires, and there are okay because I can't agree with it. I disagreed with you on that. I don't know.
You feel free to update to change your mind. It's okay to change your mind.
My,
You can just
not my
accept
mind. I
you
mean, I'm not able to
feel free.
agree.
You can
That's
totally
what.
embrace moral realism right now.
No. I'm going in the exact opposite direction. Actually, I mean, I was trying to agree with a few stuff. I was just thinking about all the things that we agreed on, and we don't agree on a lot of things. So yeah, I was just trying to okay, let me agree with Seth on a few points, but then when I was
That's fine.
thinking, I wasn't able to find a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so like the normativity objection still holds, the motivational force still holds. I mean, even if you suppose this is the particular way, even if I agree that this is the particular way in which well-being can be maximized, but then there needs to be a motivation, like I want to maximize well-being. What if that doesn't happen? That's a problem with naturalistic accounts. Like, okay, this is how you can maximize well-being. I just don't want to, or like, man, I'm not interested. Like, what then? What is given the motivational power? Like, all these objections still hold, and like I said, the Isod gap is still there. It's an appeal to nature fallacy, and I gave a lot of thought experiments to you as well. For example, you can also kind of justify, I mean, you may not be able to, but you can just add on in the hypotheticals and kind of justify Nazi genocide of Jews in that way, in the game theoretical way, right?
Yeah, sure. It's well that goes back to my point. Like, there's different layers of game theory. From a lower layer, genocide is good, but from a higher layer, it's bad. And moral progress is going up, not down, right?
Yeah, but just the explanatory impotence. I mean, that normative component is missing. Like I would say. Uh,
What attracts you to that argument? Why do you think, like,
I mean, I can just see. To be honest,
yeah,
I was a moral realist earlier. Like
yeah,
at least some months ago, I was a moral realist. But then I just realized, because I read Sam Harris's moral landscape, and I was kind of convinced with that. But he's missing on a lot of points. Like, the Izod gap is a big problem that he has, and he's just not talking about metaethics, and he's just not doing a lot of philosophy.
yeah,
Just in metaethics. Okay, I know that I love him. I love Sam Harris, and I love listening to him. There's a lot of useful content there. Unlike many subjectivists, unlike many moral anti-realists, many moral anti-realists just don't like him. All right, but
yeah,
that's not the case with me. I love him. There's a lot of useful content, and there's a lot of ways in which he has changed my mind, or shaped my mind.
yeah.
So I'm always grateful for that. But when it comes to metaethics, I think he's got it
Mhm.
wrong. I'm not sure whether you saw the Alex O'Connor Sam Harris
Yeah, I
debate.
did. Yeah.
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 So in that, Sam Harris kind of, I mean, agrees. If you're able to infer, you'll kind of notice that Sam Harris agrees that it's all preferences. I mean, individual preferences at the end of the day. Uh, like he says, okay, in your terms, preferences. He
Mhm.
says that. Okay, okay, booyah. Booyah theory. That's just emotivism. So
Right. Right.
he says he agrees with that. But
Mhm.
so basically, he's agreeing with anti-realism. But he's just saying that
Yeah.
these are these ways you can optimize well-being. All right, fine. But then Alex says, but how is that good? There's this
Mhm.
G. Moore's open question argument,
Yeah.
which says that, have you heard of it? I mean, it says, like,
Yeah.
okay, it maximizes well-being, cool, but how's that good? That's not a closed question. That's still an open question. It's not a question like, is a bachelor unmarried? It's not a closed question like that. It's an open question.
Mhm.
We can still think
Yeah.
about it. Is well-being good? Hmm. That's another open question which we can think about. There can be more explanations to that, or you can say that goodness is not reducible uh, to maybe naturalistic properties.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, suppose a naturalist comes up and says that it's all about suffering or it's all about pleasure.
Mhm.
I mean, game theory, your game theoretical account
Yeah.
has added more vagueness. I can have the same objections with that suffering account, but I have
Mhm.
more objections to this game theory account because it's just vague. I mean, it's just not telling me what to do.
So
I mean,
I
you're just
complete.
you're basically saying that, okay, there are these all list of strategies. This is the
Yeah.
worst strategy. This is the second, third, and this is the best strategy. And
Yeah.
suppose we use the second last strategy, you
Yeah.
would be saying like, oh, that's like 75% good and like 25% bad. But no, I mean, you just kind of agreed to Nazi genocide as being moral, at least short term. I mean, right? Game theory
Yeah.
has a best theory which would optimize well-being. Which one is
Mhm.
the best? But
Yeah.
this is not bad. I mean, the second last one is not bad. It's just like 75% good, 25% bad. I mean, it's just not satisfactory for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Like
maybe.
you're giving it levels, right? This
Yeah.
strategy to that strategy, these are levels. This one is
Mhm.
100% good, but this one is 90% good, but 10% bad, just 10% bad. And yeah, suppose genocide comes in somewhere there, it's not completely bad, it's somewhat good. So that's a bit problematic for me. That's just not telling what morality is. Did you understand what
So
I'm saying? I mean, I don't want to be.
well, you say multiple times. You say that's not what morality is. But as an anti-realist, you don't believe morality
No,
exists.
yeah, I don't.
So
So I
how
just
can it
want.
not be something that it is not existing?
Okay, what by that I mean, you know what I mean by that? By
No.
that I mean that what a moral realist wants when he says moral realism, usually, or
Hmm.
what people want, or what philosophers want, who are not
Hmm.
naturalist, moral realist, what they want is this normativity. And you're just not getting that
Hmm.
normativity with naturalist, moral realist accounts. But moral anti-realism has the normativity. And what is a normativity? What is a motivational force? It's the internal motivational force. You can say desires, feelings,
Hmm.
and uh, approvals. All those things are the
Hmm.
motivations. Emotions are the motivations. Like I said,
Yeah.
it doesn't have a problem there.
Yeah.
Morality is subjective or anti-real is not a horrible kind of position. It's just saying morality is not mind independently real.
Uh-huh.
It is real in the
Okay.
subjective sense.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, like I totally agree that there is a subjective component, but that subjective component it's linked to an objective component. It's not random. It's not arbitrary, and but yeah, I've tried. Yeah, maybe we just have fundamental disagreement that can't be resolved. But for me, a lot of
We
these
agree on
answers.
a lot of. I think we agree on this thing
Yeah,
that there's a subjective component to it, and you just said
yeah.
it does have it. That's
Oh
all. I
yeah,
mean,
that.
huh?
Remember how I said well-being supervenes on game theory, and well-being is the subjective component, right? Uh,
Maybe you can say that.
meta well-being. What there's Sam Harris has a very nuanced definition of well-being. That's an important way to think about it. But yes,
So Hume says that uh, reasons themselves. So like you have reasons to suppose this is what maximizes well-being. We have a rational account of that. All right,
yeah,
but Hume says that the reasons themselves are not enough. You have to have desires which inform actions. I mean, from reasons you will form beliefs, and from beliefs to get to actions you want to have desires. Only the desires will get to actions. Do you get that?
I
Yeah.
think
So,
so.
yeah. So only desire will have that motivational power, not reasons. So the desire itself is subjective.
Yes,
So that's a human
right,
view. Yeah.
right. But I like that's the biological drive. That's the desire, and the desire is subjective, but it's not arbitrary. It's based on a teleonomy of game theory, right? It's supervene. That's my. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I understand. I
So,
understand.
so some for some reason that's not working for you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but
should
would you agree? Like there is this desire. It's teleonomy. Would you agree that there are mind independent gastronomic facts? For example, what I mean by that is that
oh
this this
I'm
food
feeling them. Yeah,
this food is mind independently delicious, and you have to eat it. Will you say that?
that's an interesting
Like this food
analogy.
preference, is also the
Yeah,
same as morality preference.
mm,
You can relate both those preferences, both those desires. Like you
right.
like chocolate ice cream, but would you
Yeah,
say that it's intrinsically an mind independent property of that chocolate that it is delicious? It has to be delicious. It's a fact of the world. No, right?
yeah.
It would have to
No,
have some subjective component to it. Like
yeah.
it's
So
subjectively good.
well, it's both.
Yeah,
So
it can
that's
be both. Like
it's
suppose
both.
that suppose everybody agrees
Yeah,
on chocolate ice cream being delicious. Suppose everybody agrees with that, but you
yeah.
still won't be led to the fact that it's mind independent fact that it's an intrinsic property of chocolate ice cream that it has to be delicious. It is delicious, and it has to be eaten. You wouldn't say that, right?
Okay. Okay. This is a good angle of analysis. We're 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 uh, we're running low on time, so we gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
So I don't know. Maybe I should just answer this real quickly, and we can get to the last question.
All right, yeah, sure.
Okay. So I agree that this idea of properties I don't really like. So it sounds like you're saying, does the chocolate have the property
Okay,
of
cut down the property.
deliciousness?
Cut down the property. Chocolate is
Right.
mind independently delicious. It's
Yeah.
it's intrinsically true about the chocolate.
So so my paradigm of objectivity is in relation to goals, and I'm reducing goals to drives. And so if you have a drive to eat, the question is, does this chocolate satisfy that drive? And if it does, then it's there, like there's a subjective well-being component there's also an objective way that it's satisfying the drive. And so it's both, right?
Okay, you're tying it with well-being, I guess.
To the drive, which is to the drive creates well-being, right?
All right.
If you satisfy
Can
the
you just
drive,
quickly repeat that what you said about gastronomic realism? Are you a gastronomic realist?
probably, yeah. Because as long
Okay.
as if you have a drive, then there are better and worse ways to satisfy the drive. And that's all you need for realism.
But that doesn't tell me about moral realism.
Well, there's moral
Like,
drive.
but moral drives don't have to be the same. Like, right, and they're not mind independently true. Would you say that it's mind? Okay, let me ask you the question again. Would you say that it's mind independently true that chocolate ice cream is delicious? It's intrinsically mind independently good.
Intrinsic is, it makes me think of the word property, which I don't like.
All right, all right.
But like there's an objective relationship, and it supervenes on objective patterns in the universe, right? So the drive is not arbitrary. The drive comes from a pattern of evolution, right? And so some things are good for gastronomics, some things are good for your sense of taste, and those things are not arbitrary. There's a reason we like chocolate, because sugar helps us exist, right? It boils down to the fundamental ought.
All right. So I also don't see a lot of distinction between moral and non-moral talk. It's all about desires. Even if you say this color is good, it's just a desire. And if murder is bad, it's also a desire. So I don't see a lot of distinction between that. But I won't say that chocolate ice cream is mind independently delicious. It depends on the minds, right? It depends on minds. And by minds, if you mean that, see, minds were developed by evolution, and this it's actually the object called the brain that's creating minds. Okay, in
Yeah.
that way, it's objective. All right, I agree with that.
Okay.
But then
Here,
subjective just doesn't mean anything if that's
yeah.
the case. Everything is
Are you
objective in that case.
are you familiar with Laplace's demon?
Yeah, of course.
Laplace's demon is this hypothetical entity that has omniscience. It knows all the facts and details of the universe, all the natural facts.
Correct.
Based on assuming Laplace's demon, let's put an AI in the role of Laplace's demon. This AI has all the natural facts.
All right.
Can that AI calculate the deliciousness of chocolate to each individual? Can it look at each of the brains and say, to this brain, 85% delicious, to that brain, 65%? So that mind-independent AI can calculate all the deliciousness.
Sure, I would agree. Yeah, maybe.
So that's my perspective on objectivity.
Wait, what did you just say? I mean, mind independently. Okay,
If
how is
an
it? How is it independent of the mind? I mean, you'll have to know.
The AI is calculating it based on
Okay,
natural
calculating,
facts.
calculating,
Natural,
but it will have to have access of the brains, right? But now
the
you're saying
brain,
that. I mean,
the
but now if you say that subjectivity can be reduced to brain states, actually, so it's actually objective, then subjectivity just doesn't make sense. There's nothing that is subjective, right?
well, that's why it's both, and they reduce to each other, right?
Yeah, see, I agree that maybe I actually don't agree that well-being maximization has a particular objective answer, but I can grant that for this debate, for the discussion's sake, I can grant that maybe well-being maximization has this particular answer. But just like I said, that's is it good? Moore's open question: is it good? It's not necessarily good all the time. Like it's not capturing this goodness thing that people or philosophers talk about when they're talking about morality.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we've talked for 2 hours. Maybe
Yeah,
we
I,
should
I
just
just
wrap
have
it up here.
I just have one
Yeah.
more thought for you. I mean, you can maybe think about it. Like,
Sure.
see, so I'm just giving you a taste of your own medicine, kind of.
Oh,
just,
okay.
just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. So like,
Are you doing some tit for tat over here?
yeah, the game theory of debates.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like evolution itself doesn't give us moral facts. Anyway, I don't know
Is it,
if you would say that moral facts exist. You would say the moral facts exist in the sense that well-being facts exist. All right, okay.
what about gastronomic facts?
Gastronomic facts. Yeah, it's fact that this guy will love this chocolate 85%. Right? Maybe that exists. That's just beside the point. Like what I'm trying to say is that uh, evolution is not necessarily truth tracking in the sense of morality. Okay, so maybe sometimes it's truth tracking, maybe epistemically or empirically it can be truth tracking in the sense that 200,000 years ago there's a den and human beings are there, and 3 lions get into the den and 2 lions get out, and 3 minus 2 is 1, so 1 lion is still there in the den. So arithmetically we have to be it has to be true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that evolutionarily, morally, we have been truth tracking. Did you get the point? It's called evolutionary debunking argument. Like, we are here to survive. We are here to survive, not to truth track all the time. But sometimes we do truth track because it helps in our survival. And that's when these arithmetic calculations have to be done, or maybe perceptual analysis of the world has to be done. It's kind of reliable, right? But moral truth tracking doesn't make sense. It's not tracking the truth. It's just tracking maybe desires or matching, aligning or not. Yeah.
To me, that argument only makes sense if you think there's a difference between moral goals and evolutionary goals. If you collapse moral goals into evolutionary goals, then there's no conflict.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. But it's a good angle of analysis. Hey, you've done a great job. I've really enjoyed this debate. It was very stimulating.
Me too. Yeah.
You helped me think deeper and harder. These are hard issues, and you know.
I'm glad I did. I'm glad you said that. I mean, I thought I won't be able to like make you deeply introspect or something. I mean, I didn't know, but I'm glad that it did. I did.
Yeah, and you know, people don't change their mind overnight. Like, sometimes we have to think about things, maybe sleep on it a little bit. I'll be like, you know, he's kind of right about that. Maybe I need to change my moral theory a little bit, right?
Exactly.
And so I really appreciate this type of discussion, so we can learn and maybe grow and get more accurate in our theories.
Absolutely. I'd just like to add one thing. Like, I was a moral realist for maybe like 3 to 4 years, you can say. I was a moral realist, but then I kept switching in between moral realism, anti-realism. I was completely confused. But now it's like I'm pretty certain, like, I can debate and stuff. I have a consistent account of metaphysics. Yeah. So maybe you can also change into anti-realist after some time.
I'll have to think about it. We might have to do more discussions.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
I look forward to more discussions, if you could. Yeah.
Oh, do you want to share your YouTube channel?
Yeah, sure. So my YouTube channel's name is Curiosity. I hope Seth will put the link to my YouTube channel in his descriptions. to this video. Well, you can check that out. I talk about philosophy, science, and stuff. Basically, I'm on a free will project. So if you want to know how to debunk free will, you can watch my videos.
All right, everyone. Definitely check out Abhishek's channel. It's called Curiosity. It's the Curiosity Guy channel. And it looks like he's got lots of good videos on free will, if that's a topic that interests you, which it should. I am also, I've been reading some books on free will lately, so I'm going to be probably writing and debating on this topic as well in the future. So maybe we'll be able to discuss this together as well going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care. I hope you enjoyed this, everyone.
Take care, Seth. Thank you for inviting me.